So a little bit about my company called Data-N. We are a company based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So we are trying to help newsrooms and journalists to produce more data journalism, especially newsrooms that with limited resources, right? Small and medium-sized newsrooms. So we provide training, advocacy for open data. So I'm also very involved in the open data movement in Malaysia. And also we do collaboration with newsrooms. I'm still out there, crunching data and trying to do investigations, but using a data-driven approach. So these are some of the newsrooms that you see on screen. These are some of the newsrooms that we collaborate with. All right, today this talk, I have about 30 minutes, I think about 25 minutes now. So I'm just going to go, give you a very brief introduction, right, on 2 points. One is, why do we use data in election reporting, right? How can data journalism improve our reporting when it comes to elections? And the second is I'm going to share with you, about a dozen of data journalism projects from all over the world on how they use data, to report on elections, right? So hopefully from those examples, we'll be able to get some inspiration and also some ideas about how we can use data to cover election. All right, so let's jump into the election process. I always like to describe the election. We can divide the election process in 3 different phases, right? The pre-election period, which is the period that is like getting married, right? Who you want to vote for, and the second half of you will be trying to give you a lot of promises, right? To woo your votes, right? To get you to support them, right? And then there is voting and results, right? And this is the period where everybody is very excited, right? Just like, if your wife is pregnant, you want to know whether it's a boy or a girl. So everybody wants to know who is the winner. And after the result is announced, then you will get the post-election period, right? This is also the period where you have to face the reality, right? Who is the winner and what are they going to do for the next, for the next term, right? And this is where, you have the baby and you have to face all the real life issues, right? So these are the 3 different phases in an election. And what can data journalism do, right? So we are going to look at stories using data-driven approach in these 3 different phases, all right? The first one, before election, right, pre-election, right, one of the most important thing I think for media is how we shape the public debate around the election, right? Whether we are focusing on the real issues, the issues that people are most concerned about, or we are talking about, gossips, we are talking about whether this guy is a good guy or bad guy, right? But there are ways for us to use data to help our voters to focus on the real issues, right? So what you are seeing on the screen is actually a project done by Google News Initiative with collaboration with newsrooms in Brazil. This is during the 2018 Brazilian presidential election. So what they do is that they look at Google Trends data to see what people were searching, right? When they want to know about the candidates, right? When you use Google to search for a candidate, what kind of issues, right, they are trying to search on Google, right? So this will give the reporters as well as the public a clue on what are the issues that people are most concerned about, okay? And Google Trends data is public, right? All journalists, all the public can access. And actually you can, on this case, the newsrooms actually collaborated with Google Trends together to develop this project. So this is something that we can learn from. The second here, there are 2 stories here in this slide. The one on the left, both are quizzes, right? Quizzes on election. The one on the left is actually a quiz developed by Reader, based in Taiwan, right? They are a news organization called Reader, based in Taiwan. And in this quiz, right, the interesting thing is that the quiz doesn't just ask you some questions so that they based on your answers given, they match you with the election promises or the manifesto of candidates, right? To see that, which candidates actually match your preference more based on your answers, right? The interesting thing here is that they started by asking you, okay, first, without answering any questions, they ask you, who is your preferred candidate? Who would you vote for if the election is today? So you pick the candidate that you like, right? Then only you answer, I think about 9 questions on different policies, right? And after that, after you answer, you finish answer the 9 questions, they will tell you that actually based on your answers, right, your preferred candidate is actually this person. So you can see that how different, right? How is it different from your initial perception, right? You might prefer candidate A because she's a woman, or maybe because you like her personality and things like that. But when it comes to policies, right, based on those 9 questions, right, at the end of it, you will see that, oh, actually you are more aligned with another candidate, maybe, right? So this again help the voters, to aware about, what their preference on different policies and how that match with candidates. It's not just the personal attraction, but also based on policies, right? I think it's a very smart quiz to do that. And the second quiz that you see on the right-hand side of the screen is actually a quiz done by Washington Post for 2020, the presidential election in the US. Again, it asks about 20 questions. I think it's a long quiz. And once you answer those questions, it will tell you, which Democrat candidates actually is your preferred choice, right? Based on your answers, right? This happened when they are doing the primary election, right? Within the Democrat Party, okay? So these are some of the, again, these are quizzes, right? But they are all based on data, right? First, you need to collect all the data about different policies, right? To collect the different stands and views from different candidates on different policies. And from there, you're able to design this kind of quiz to help your voters to first focus on the real issues, but the second is also to know the candidates better, all right? And when it comes to election, right? In a lot of countries, election system is actually quite complicated, okay? For example, in the US, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, you have different electoral system, right? And how do you help the voters to understand all the systems? So data is actually a very powerful tool. So I don't think I can switch between can you see my browser now? Can someone give me some feedback? Can you see my web browser? No, right? I think I can't, I'm stuck with my PowerPoint presentation. It's okay. Later, I will just stop sharing this and we'll go to my web browser, right, to show you this two game, right? Just give me a while. We just skip to the following slide first. In some countries, right, just now we talk about the system, right? How do you explain the system to your voters using data? And another issue that we always face, we always face is that there are too many candidates in an election, right? Especially when you have simultaneous election for officers at different levels. So how do you help the voters to know the candidates, right? Especially in Malaysia, for example, we only have about 2 weeks of the campaign period from the nomination to the voting day, right? So in that very short period of time, how can we as media, right, help our voters to understand the candidates so that they can make a better informed choice, right? So here are 2 examples. The first one on the left is actually a website developed in Colombia during the Colombian election. For those who can read Spanish here, I can't, unfortunately. The title means don't throw away your vote, okay? Because in Colombia, right, there are more than thousands of candidates. And many people just decided, I'm not going to vote, right? Because it's too complicated. I don't know who are these people, right? So in this website, again, later I will show you the live website. You can search for candidates, right, to know about their background. But most importantly is that the journalists actually look through all the profile of the candidates. They will be able to tell you whether they have any criminal records, whether they have been investigated for corruption, for example, and how much is their asset, right? Things like that, right, based on public data. So what they did is they compiled all the information and they built a public database that for voters, to search the database, right? On the left is a project developed by BBC Indonesia for the elections in Indonesia, right? It is about political dynasties, okay? So if you search for different areas, electoral areas in Indonesia, and you search for the candidates, you'll be able to see, whether, they have other family members who are also in the administrations, whether they are the sons or daughters of previous presidents, or governors, things like that, to show that, how these candidates, they have the advantage because they are they have this family support, and they are in a political family. Okay, the same project was also done by Taiwan, a Taiwanese website called Reader. This one on your right hand side. So in Taiwan, you'll see that cronyism as well as these kind of political dynasties are also everywhere. Okay, so you will see that this chart, right? You'll see that the blue color, the circle, means how many times this candidate has been elected, right? If there's one circle, which means one time. But if you look at the orange color circles, right, that means how many times the direct family of this candidate has been elected, right? So you can see that the first candidate, right, although he was only elected for one time, but he has family members that were elected more than 10 times, right? And this is the orange color means direct family members. The red color means extended family members, like the cousins, the parents-in-laws, and things like that, okay? They actually compiled the data by looking at records starting from 1940s, okay? They collect all the records, they have to verify themselves, because we know that, family and this kind of kinship, is very hard to verify, right? When they don't share the same last name, or they don't have the same family names, right? You need to verify it, right? Yeah, this is what the database they have built. On the left is a very interesting project that I like a lot. It is developed by Reuters, the Reuters graphics teams in Singapore. It is about India elections, right? I don't think I want to explain here. Later, I'll show you the website, right? It's very interesting. Okay, just now we talked about helping the voters to understand the electoral system as well as the candidates, right? So another very important issue is, of course, political financing, right? Where do the candidates get their political funding, right? And there are different ways we can use data to help to raise the transparency on this issue, right? So here are 3 examples that I want to share with you. The first one on the left is actually a game developed by the, I think, United Daily in Taiwan, okay? You can play the game as a candidate, all right? And you can decide how much money you want to spend to buy, for example, advertisement board, to buy, to give out free face masks, to give out other freebies, and you total up them together and you see how much you have spent. And then they will use that number to compare against the real expenses by candidates, right? So through a game, you're able to learn that, oh, to win an election, you actually have to spend a lot. And the next question is, of course, so where do they get the money, right? And that's become interesting. The second story also developed in Taiwan, right? Because Taiwan just had their elections not long ago. So there are a lot of good examples from that country. The second, the one in the middle, is actually a crowdsourced project, right? They ask voters or the public, right, to snap photos of advertisement signboard, the huge one, the giant signboard, and send to them, right? So they are able to collect all these different signboards, around the cities, around the nations, and from there they are able to calculate, to estimate how much money you actually spend, right, to put up all these different signboards. Okay, it's very interesting. Then they built this database for you to search them. The third one is a recent news game developed by Malaysia Kini. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? This is not specifically on election, but it kind of explains to you how much money you can spend, how much allocation you can get from the governments, if you are a government's MPs, MPs means parliamentarian in Malaysia, and and you will play the game, and when the voters will come to ask you for money, whether you want to spend that money. When there is a disaster in your area, do you want to spend the money to build a relief center for them, or you want to give out the money and things like that, right? So again, it is a way to let voters understand that actually how much money each representative can get from the government, and what are some of the considerations when they're spending those money, okay? Right, the other two projects, right, that I also like a lot, the one on the left is actually developed by a organization in the US called Trace. What they did is that they are tracking the political donation by NRA, right? NRA is the National Rifle Associations, which is, advocating for the rights to have guns, in the US. And we know that gun violence is a huge issue in the US. It is also a very, it is also the flashpoint between different parties, different candidates. So what they did is that, because for a fact, we know that NRA, this National Rifle Associations, have been donating to candidates, to lobby the candidates to pass laws or not to pass laws, that favor them, right? But they want to sell guns to the public, so the laws have to be friendly to them, and they give a lot of money to their candidates. And in the US, all the political donation above a certain limit, you have to declare it, right, to the election commissions. So what happened is that this project, they actually started a Twitter account. Whenever NRA give a political donation to any candidate, the Twitter account will tweet about it automatically. So it's a Twitter bot, okay? So when NRA give a donation, then there will be a tweet. When you give a second donation, there will be a second tweet, okay? And they also built a database for you to explore who are the recipients and how much money given every time, right? I think it's very creative and also very engaging, right? So you keep the public engaged and informed all the time, right? The one on the right-hand side is another project done by icenewssource.org. Again, this is in the US. However, this is not a national project like what is usually done by Washington Post or New York Times. This one is actually a local election, the San Diego County, right? County is very small, right? In Malaysia, we call it daerah, a district, okay? And what happened is that in that county, right, if you want to get the data about political donations, right, it's very hard, the campaign finance records, right? It is not very friendly. So what they do is that they scrape all the data and they build a public database for the voters to search. But of course, based on the data, they also did other stories, right? But here, this screenshots only shows you the database, okay? So these are some of the ideas, I think that we can use data to better inform our voters and to get them engaged with the political process, okay? So now from pre-election period, now we are coming to on voting day, right? So besides from the live reporting of electoral results and things like that, what else can we do, okay? Here, I'm not going to show you any examples about how do you present results. I think everybody's expert on that, right? Here, I'm going to show you that what else you can do besides from chasing for the result, besides to become the first in announcing who are the winners, right? What else you can do? So this is a project called Election Land in the US. This is the second time. The first time it was done, it was in 2016 presidential election. And then 2020, they repeated again, right? So what happened is that they got together over 1,000 journalists, okay, 1,000 journalists from different newsrooms. They are national newsrooms. They are also local newsrooms to work together. They also work together with Google as well as other technology platforms. So what they do is that they want to track what are the issues, what are the challenges that voters face when they want to cast their vote on polling day, okay? And they use they use both conventional and more technical approaches to do that, right? The conventional is that they have hotlines, they have numbers, right? Not just for the national newspapers, but all the local publishers, local newsrooms that join this project, right? They will give their own local hotlines and WhatsApp number, for their local residents to report to them if they encounter any issues, right? For example, long queue. For example, that they could not find their names, on the record, so they couldn't vote, right? Those kind of issues, right? On the other side, the technical part is that they actually work with Google, and Google used the Google Trends data. For example, what are people searching online to fit them, For example, all these small dots that you see on the maps, right? If you browse over each dot, the dot will actually tells you that, you know, there is an increase of searches. For example, this one in Lake Montezuma, Arizona, right? You can see that it says that, you know, people are searching for riot, right? So this will give an alert, okay, what is happening there? And then they can inform their local partners, the local newsrooms based in that location to check out, you know, what is happening, right? So you're using internet data, you're using Google data to help you to know what are the issues happening on that day. Why are they doing that? Because using this, right, they are able to address some issues on the same day, right? For example, in the morning, if there was a problem about long queue in a certain county, right? And if you report about it, right, the administration would have to act faster to address that issue, right? So the whole process is actually to not just record what is happening on that day, but also help to address some of the issues faced by voters, okay? So this is not just on election results, right? So I think this dashboard is just one part of the whole project. The whole project actually involved, you know, different local newsrooms reporting on their local incidents based on the data given by Election Land, given by this project. It's a huge data project. They compile data from different sources and they share with all the partner newsrooms in this project so that they can act immediately on any incidents on that day, right? Another thing that we can do during the voting, of course, this is actually before the voting day, is to do fact check, right? To fact check the claims made by candidates. I think our Indonesian friends have been doing a great job. In 2019, they have this live fact checking collaboration, huge collaboration, you know, with dozens of newsrooms to fact check the presidential debate, live debate, right? And it might sound sexy, right, doing live fact check, right? But actually, the traditional fact check is actually good enough, right? If you look at the screenshot on the left, this is actually a newspaper in Kenya. It is called The Nation. They have a project called Newsplex. It's their data desk. And they use data to fact check the different claims and different promises made by their candidates, right? So you can see that, you know, they have this small meter that will tell you whether it's unproven or true or false. All right. So again, this requires data claims. We need to counter check with the data. Okay. Right now, election is finished. So now it's post-election, right? So I know that some of the things that we like to do is actually post-election analysis. Okay. To look at the voting trends, right? So not just the voting results or, you know, which party has improved their result, you know, which party did badly and things like that. But it will be interesting if you can compare the electoral results with demographics data, right? So for example, here, this is a story by Bloomberg, right? A very simple story. They only make 5 maps and they want to show how the current French president, Macron, how he beat the far-right candidate, Le Pen, okay? So they look at, they compare the electoral results with unemployment as well as education degrees, right? And it shows you a very clear trend that, you know, in areas where unemployment rate are higher, okay, they tend to vote for Le Pen, right, the far-right candidate. In areas where there are more candidates with higher education level, they tend to support Macron, okay? Another interesting project that I like, this is by El Pais. It is a news organizations based in Spain, and this is about the Spanish election, right? So if you have access to data, right, very granular data about let's say each block in the district, how they vote, right? Actually, an interactive map is actually a very good idea. So this map, right, it allows you to go to a street by street level, right, to know how people voted, just like in your neighborhood, or, you know, the next blocks the next blocks from where you live and things like that. So it sort of personalized the elections for you, right? And the same approach also done by some Taiwanese organization to look at, you know, which area, right, which district has a totally different voting behavior compared to the other areas surrounding it.
Dan kamu juga bisa membandingkan daerah tempat kamu tinggal dengan daerah sekitarnya juga. Kamu bisa lihat orang-orang yang memilih di luar kecenderungan dukungan politik yang ada di wilayah tertentu juga.
So very popular because people actually like to check out, how their neighborhood has voted, or how their hometown has voted and things like that. Okay. Right. Election is finished, but our job is not yet done, right? So the last thing that we can do is actually not the last thing, sorry. The continuous thing that we can do is actually to track the election promises, right? So here are two projects. On the left is one developed by Malaysia Kini, right, to monitor, because the winning parties, the winning political coalitions in our 2018 election promised that they are going to do 10 things in 100 days, right? So tracking them is a very important task for the media. On the right-hand side, you can see that this is by Polity based in the US. They already started the Biden Promise Tracker scorecard, on the first day when the new president was sworn in, right? They already started, right? Trump is the old story, right? They are now tracking the promises by the new president, and this project will be ongoing for the next 4 years, right, until the end of his term. So I think democracy is not just about election. Democracy is a long-term process. So I think we as the media, it's our responsibility to make sure that we keep the politicians in check. And so these are some of the projects that we can do. Okay, let me just stop for the slides and I'll just switch to web view for a while. Okay, I can finish it in 5 minutes, no problem. Just give me a minute. Yeah, just to show you some of the projects that just now I mentioned, right? This is the first one by 538 to explain the complex issue of redistricting in the US, right? We call it gerrymandering, right? It's how you draw the boundary of the constituencies, okay? They actually try to explain it by telling people that how you draw the boundary will affect the results, right? So this is the current boundary, right? You can change the option. If you want the Republicans to win big in election, you can redraw the districts so that the Republicans will get the most of the, will win most of the constituencies, right? If you want to favor Democrats, this is how you can redraw, right? The boundaries of the different seats, right? And there are some other options, right? I think this is a very powerful way to make people realize that, oh, so it's not a fair game at all, right? It depends on who is given the power to draw the boundaries. And based on the way you draw the boundaries, you can decide which party win in an area, okay? The second game that just now I mentioned to explain issues about electoral process is one game that I developed together with Malaysia Kini. This was before the last election. So how powerful is your vote, right? I'll just show you how can you do this. You have to pick where you are voting. So for example, I vote in my hometown called Batu Pahat, and you pick an opponent. These are all real politicians in Malaysia, all right? So I just pick this guy. So you're going to fight with this guy, and you win or you lose depends on your constituency, right? The area that you vote. So how did I lose? Right, because my component, he's the MP for Putrajaya, which is the administrative capital of Malaysia. And in Putrajaya, you only have 18,000 voters, right? But you elect one MP, one member of parliament. And the constituency where I was voting is Batu Pahat. We have 90,000 voters, right? It's 5 times more voters than Putrajaya. However, in Batu Pahat, you also get to elect only one member of parliament. So which means that my vote, the vote for each voter in Batu Pahat is not as powerful as the vote in Putrajaya, right? Because 18,000 of voters there can elect one member of parliament. But here we have 90,000 of voters. We also elect one member of parliament. This is not fair, right? It's not one person, one vote. But how are we going to explain these issues, to young voters and also to first-time voters? That's why we designed this game to help them understand, right, this issue, right? And if you click on here, and they will have an explainer, also an interactive explainer on how the electoral system works in Malaysia, right? This is the game that I mentioned, Spend Like an MP. It's about political spending, okay? So I just demo to you, you start it. And you can choose between two parties. One is durian, one is monkeys. Okay, the durian and, okay, let's say I want to do monkeys party, which is the opposition, right? And then you continue, okay, right? And you have this money here, and you have to maintain your popularity, all right? Okay, and now they will have like different scenarios, so that you will have to spend your money, how many assistants you want to hire, for example, right? You pay their car loans, house mortgage, things like that. Yeah, and somebody came to your service center and asking for help. Are you going to give them money and things like that, right? So the other project that just now I mentioned is Don't Throw Away Your Vote. This is a project by Data Sketch based in Colombia. So besides from here, you can search for the candidate. I'm going to translate to English so that everybody can read. Right. So they also compile a list of candidates that tell you, for example, who has been in the Congress the longest, who are the most questions. Here is basically those have investigations or criminal records, right? So if you click on them, and they will, the heritage means the assets, right? This is the translation is a bit off. It actually means assets, the properties, the wealth of congressmen. Okay, all right. So this is the kind of database I think we can do to help our voters to understand their candidates more, right? And I mentioned I like this project a lot, right? This is a project about India elections. And you know that India is the biggest democracy in the world. They have this huge election with thousands of candidates. So if you scroll this page, right, it's very interesting. They put all the different photos of the candidates here, okay? And you scroll it. This is all the candidates contesting in the Indian general election. So far, we have scrolled through 2,000 candidates, right? Yes, it is that many candidates, right? The one seat has 185 candidates in one seat, right? You can see that there's a black line here to tell you these are all the candidates in one seat. And if you scroll through 5,000 now, right? And there are also candidates who can run for 2 different seats, okay? And now, after you scroll through 7,000 candidates, now only you get a female candidate, okay? Only about 9% of the total candidates are female. So you can see there's a great gender inequality in the candidates. And also there are third gender candidates, okay? So you'll see that criminal charge, these are the candidates with criminal charge and which party they are from, right? The interesting project here is actually, the interesting thing about this project is actually they use the faces, right, of the candidates. And where do they get the faces? Of course, this is public data. When you submit your nomination paper, when you want to run, you have to submit your photos, and the government, the election commissions make the photos public, right? So this is, check out this project, it's interesting. And this is the Biden promise tracker. You can see everything is 0 because he just started. Yeah, so you will see that all the different, they compile all the different promises made by him, and they're going to track it for the next 4 years. All right. So guys, that's all my presentation. Before I go to my last slide and share with you my, you can download this presentation. I forgot to mention that. Let me just go, hold on. Oh, sorry. Right, some lessons that we learned from those projects, right? The first thing is journalism first, graphics later, okay? A lot of people are very obsessed with graphics, like good presentation. Here, when we are talking about election reporting, I think journalism is the most important one. How we can use journalism to inform the voters so that they can make better decisions, and how we can use our journalistic skills and approaches to keep our politicians in check, right? And the other thing I want to mention about Datatalk Asia is that, it's a good initiative because we are sharing data, right? But however, I hope that in the future, there will be plans to go beyond just data sharing, right? Because for election data, you know, if I'm a journalist based in Malaysia, I don't actually need data from Philippines or Indonesia, right? Because the data is very different. The electoral system is also very different, right? But I think what can benefit more journalists here is actually if we can share our methodologies, how we report on an issue, how we build something, right? Or the reporting recipe, right? Step-by-step recipe, right? How we get the data, how we analyze the data, and how we build something, you know, and what are the lessons that we learn, what are the best practices, right? I think this one is the next step that Datatalk.Asia can look at, right? And also that remember that, you know, the collaboration shouldn't be just among journalists. We should also collaborate with civil society, tech platforms, and also academics, you know, in serving our audiences, right? And there's a new trend that is coming out, is actually crowdsourced information, because elections is something that involve all the voters, all the citizens, and it would be nice if you can engage them in the process, right, by, you know, getting information from. But of course, that is how do you do good crowdsourcing? That is a totally another issue. All right. The last thing that I want to remind everyone is that just now Koma mentioned that I'm actually the competition officer for Sigma Awards. So just to share with you that this is an international competition for data journalism, and the deadline is 1st of February. You have another 4 days. If you have published any data projects in the year 2020, I encourage you to apply to submit your project for these awards. There's no application fee. Everything is free. You just have to fill out an online forms, and not just, you know, winning an award, not just simple, but we use this award as an opportunity to collect all the different data projects published all over the world. We want to build a database of all data journalism projects, and we were going to share the database with all data journalists, with all journalists and newsrooms in the whole world. So if you want your projects to be able to be included in the data projects, right, please submit your projects to us. All right. And I thank you very much.